is Lauren O'Callaghan, Entertainment Editor for GamesRadar Plus, and I'm joined by Zoe.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the big questions we have after watching Stranger Things Season 2.
Yep, we're going to insert a spoiler warning right here, because if you haven't seen the entirety of Stranger Things Season 2, guess what? We're going to spoil the whole thing, because we're going to be talking about it in great detail. So
all of it. If you have seen it though, you're in the right place, because so are we, and you probably have just as many questions as we do. We're going to be talking about our top 5 questions that we have after watching it. So let's dive right in. And the first one for me is, where are the rest of Eleven's siblings?
dead. Or, the less morbid option, they've been whisked away to some different government facility, probably in America somewhere.
Well, thanks for not holding back,
No.
first of all, because...
Thought I'd just get it right out there in the open that they could be dead.
Yeah. But yeah, so we met one of her siblings in Season 2, 8, basically. So that begs a question, where are 1 to 7 and 9 and 10?
So we saw that Roman and 11 were in the same room in the flashback that Terry Ives had. So presumably, if you keep all these superpower kids in the same facility, they're going to start feeling like they're a group and they're going to start seeing you as the enemy. So the wise thing to do, I hate the fact that I can see this from Brenner's point of view, is to split them up and put them in different places so that they can't team up and use their insane supernatural powers against the powers that be.
I mean, that makes total sense because you don't want that much firepower in one place. But I think there's no chance that they're still going to be in captivity, right? Because 11 escaped and 8 escaped. Like, there's no way that they're going to have been contained, right? So they're not actually... Like, they probably were taken to another lab, but they probably won't be there anymore. They're going to be out in the real world hiding from the government.
Yeah, or they could be in the government, because we know that if we assume 11 was the last one and there isn't 12, etc., etc., 11 must have been the youngest, surely, because they're not going to start naming people before they've been born, which means that explains why Roman, or 8, was older than 11. So
right.
Perhaps, if we've got numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, they're going to be in their maybe late 30s, 40s by now, which means that they could very well be in the government machine, like perhaps overseeing some experiments or using their powers to some capacity that helps out the government. Or they could be, of course, on the other side like Roman and just be completely rebelling against the machine. But It would be really cool to see 11 meet them again and us realise they're not all kids anymore. They're actually adults who have had to grow up and deal with this trauma that they endured for their childhood years. But yeah, anyway, so talking about the government leads us nicely on to the fact that Dr. Owens is still in Hawkins. Is he still working for the government?
Well, I was really surprised by his character because I thought he was going to be like the full-on bad guy and evil, like Dr. Brenner.
Yeah.
And actually, it kind of turns out that he's all right. I mean, there was that whole awkward moment where he like casually threatened Nancy and Jonathan and said they'd do anything to keep this all quiet. But other than that, like he didn't, murder anyone in their sleep or kidnap people.
Or, experiment on a small child and put her in a small room. So I full on thought that he was going to lure Bob and Newbie when they were in the Hawkins lab into the path of a demodog. And when he didn't, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was pleasantly surprised, but I'm also now more suspicious than ever because I really think he could...
You have trust issues.
I mean, let's not get started on that. I for sure think he could still be working for the government. I think it's unlikely they would have just left their top scientist behind in Hawkins just because his leg hurts because he got bitten a little bit.
Yeah, but he's recuperating, clearly. He can't really walk that well.
His wound was not that deep at all. I think he's a inside agent for the government. I think he's been kept in Hawkins to get all buddy-buddy with Jim Hopper, as we saw him already do at the diner they were at, just to keep an eye on what's happening there. Because even though the gate to the upside down might be closed now, I mean, it's obvious that it's not going to be the end of things because being really meta here, we know season 3 is coming. And the government are going to want someone there to give them a heads up if things start getting weird again.
Okay, so another question that we have after watching the season is about Will. And is he still connected to the upside down or is it all over now?
I mean, the gate is closed. So there obviously is the argument that now the gate's closed, the upside down influence has ended and Will is going to be completely fine. He's going to go on and buy a 2-bedroom house and get married and have kids. It's not going to happen. It's just not. It'd be way too neat. We've seen that at the beginning of season 2, Will was able to see visions of the upside down. Then obviously that took a majorly different turn when he got possessed by the shadow monster. Has the shadow monster left some remnants of it inside him is what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they didn't end the season in a similar way of like him coughing something up that proved he was still connected to it. But how are we going to have season 3 if he's not? I mean, okay, we could, but I think it's likely that he will be at the centre of things again, because you don't go through that without, some repercussions or consequences or somehow being connected to it. And okay, the gate's closed and it wasn't at the end of season 1, which is a big difference, but the Upside Down isn't going anywhere. It's still there. Like, we can see that it's still there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to see whether the Shadow Monster gave him any kind of upside downy, very scientific term, that powers. Because we know that the Shadow Monster had this hive mind, it was incredibly intelligent, and it was able to sense what was going on in all areas of the Upside Down and Hawkins. What if Will still has some remnant of that in his brain? What if he's suddenly a tiny bit more omniscient than he was before? Those powers would come in handy, either working for 11 and the kids and making sure they stayed out of danger, or working for the government as it kept tabs on the Upside Down.
It's about time something good happened to the poor guy. Like, he's had a rough couple of seasons of it, and actually getting some superpowers might maybe take the edge off a little bit. So yeah, I really like that idea, actually. And it would kind of be a change for his character, because how many seasons can we see of Will being in trouble before it gets just a bit too much?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously fed up with his victim status at the beginning of season 2 already.
Yeah, and I think they handled it great in this season. I just don't think we can do it for season 3.
It will be too exhausting. But while we're on the subject of superpowers, let's turn to our favourite telekinetic friend, 11. Are her powers getting stronger?
Yes, she flew.
I mean,
she can
obviously.
fly. You saw that.
I mean, did she fly though?
I mean, she hovered.
Yeah, okay. That's getting there slowly but surely.
Enough. Don't be nitpicky about this.
I mean, I'm going to try. Sue me. And also, she closed the gate to the Upside Down, which was, come on, at least a mile high, also into another dimension, just like to make that perfectly clear.
Yeah, I mean, her powers have definitely progressed from what we saw in the first season, which, was... Don't get me wrong, impressive, but, on a much smaller scale. I mean, she really did some incredible stuff in this season. Part of that, I think, was coming from tapping into her anger like her sister taught her. But also, the question does remain, like, are there going to be consequences to that? Because the stronger she gets, presumably, the more damage that's maybe doing to her body. I mean, don't forget, the girl has nosebleeds every time she uses her powers. That can't be good. Yeah,
also, when she was in the high school in the last season and she killed all those agents when they began to threaten her, Mike, Lucas and Dustin, she made them die by doing something in their heads, but whatever the cause was, the consequence was that blood came out of their nose and eyes and ears. So obviously something is happening with the brain in their heads, and the same thing could be happening to 11. It could be a hemorrhage, but whatever it is, I think you're right. It's unlikely that she'd get more powerful and not see any repercussions after it.
So the final question we have is about the Shadow Monster itself, because he's still alive and kicking and being very, very menacing.
I mean, the interesting thing was that the end of the season didn't just see him striding across the horizon in the Upside Down. He was it was very clearly zooming in and zeroing in on the high school, which, frustratingly for us who are trying to work out what's going to happen, had almost all of the main characters in it. It had Nancy, Dustin, Lucas, Will, Mike, and 11 in there. Yeah, and Jonathan.
Joyce and Hopper were in the car park,
so he could be targeting anyone. He could be targeting Will, because as Will said earlier in season 2, is that it's not him that he wants to kill, it's that everyone else he wants dead. So maybe Will is his one link into our realm, and he's trying to get him back so he can open the gate again. Obviously, maybe he's zeroing in on 11, because as we saw at the end of season 2, you can clearly see that the Shadow Monster is on the other side of the gate and also seems to turn to look at 11 as she's closing it. So he clearly knows she's a threat.
And also, he's clearly a monster, but there's some intelligence there, like you say, because he's zeroing in. And he's not zeroing in on, the government agency that's been poking and prodding his universe for God knows how long. He's zeroing in on the kids that, frankly, kind of stumbled across all of this and just wanted to get out. Yeah. And that, to me, indicates a more kind of human trait of maybe vengeance or at least, interest, rather than, an animalistic one or a higher power sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think they should be worried, basically.
I mean, maybe a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I think also it's obviously hungry. We saw that when it infected Hawkins, it did the tunnels under the ground, and everything that it touched turned to the same kind of decayed, dead black matter that you find in the Upside Down, which begs the question, was the Upside Down once an alive, vibrant world like Hawkins? Maybe it was a parallel reality where the timeline changed a little bit and, things just happened differently and another parallel universe was brought into being. Then this Shadow Monster infected it somehow, maybe in a perverse, like, cyclical, identical turn of events as 11's creation, and just sucked that reality dry, and maybe now he wants this one.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that actually we know so little about the Upside Down. Like, we've had 2 seasons of the show now, and really, we don't know much more about it than we did when we saw the first season. And actually, that's one of the great things about the show, that it works even without that kind of knowledge. But as we go into season 3 and 4, I think we are going to start to need a few more answers about what exactly is this parallel universe.
Yeah, it's inevitable that we're going to start to want to answer, why does it have exact replicas of the buildings in it? And you're right, what kind of intelligence is behind this massive shadow monster? Also, how can we stop it? Perhaps more important than any of those questions, how can we just stop it?
We want to know that first, Duffer Brothers. How do we stop it? Tell us how.
Just quick PSA at the beginning of season 3 would go a long way, just saying. Okay, so that's what we think. Let us know what questions you want answered about Stranger Things Season 2 in the comments below. Click those boxes on the left for more content from us. Don't forget to hit that big button in the middle to subscribe, and stay here for more entertainment news, reviews, previews and features right here on GamesRadar Plus.